Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your host, David Fox. With me, as usual, is my co-host, UberHansen, and we are here live for our first Victory Monday as the Buffalo Bills win against the Arizona Cardinals 34-28. It was a very stressful back and forth game. There was a point where it seemed like it might not be stressful and then immediately got back to stressful. So, pretty par for the course for a Buffalo Bills opener. A very good game, a game that it seems to have followed our basic what we thought would happen for what we predicted on this show, and I think others throughout Cover One kind of echoed the same sentiments. Some things we'll talk about injury wise. We'll talk about the Dolphins if we have a chance, but we're going to spend a lot of the time just sort of focusing on what happened in this game and what's going to happen afterwards. Before we get to any of that, though, Uber, how are you?
Yeah, it's a Victory Monday, so I am fabulous right now. That game, I don't wear a smartwatch or anything like everyone else does and like tracks your heart rate and stuff. I can only fathom what my heart rate constantly is during these games. I might as well not work out on the weekends because my heart's going to get all the workout it needs during that game. Which of course, like in classic Bills fashion, they make it a little bit harder than it had to be at the end of that game.
Yeah, it was definitely stressful. It was not fun. It was, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It was fun. There were certain parts of it that were very, very fun. But, oh man, when you start off in a hole early, when you're down they were down 17-3 at one point. And that was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst case scenario that they could be in right now, essentially. Yeah. Other than just like having a deeper deficit. But it was all pretty good. It was good. It ended up being good. Plenty of stuff to talk about. We do have some things that we're going to get into first, not the least of which is our wonderful sponsors, which probably involves many of you. If you want to head over, it's this. Yeah. There we go. Let me. Now we're doing this. And I can't find the actual. Wait, here it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if you are one of our lovely One Pass subscribers, you probably got to experience game day with us in the Discord channel. It's a great time. It's a great group of people who all endured the same level of stress that you all did, I'm sure. And if you weren't there, if you did not get to experience that, you can still sign up. You can still do this. It is a wonderful, fantastic group. It gives you all sorts of benefits, including just access to exclusive content. You get scouting reports, analytics. You get Greg Thompson's salary cap breakdown. It's just a good old grand time. And now with our new partnership with 26 shirts, you also get a. Am I allowed to talk about this? They announced this, right?
They tweeted it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just just want to make sure. But you do get a shirt from 26 Shirts as part of your sign up. And you also get a free sticker from Cover One. You get a free shirt as well from Cover One, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff you get with this. And it's $60 a year. A year. We're not taking this a month free. It's a year. And it's totally worth it. I can't emphasize this enough. I can't push this enough. It's absolutely 100% totally worth it, and I hope every single one of you here signs up for it, and that you all get to experience games and such with us as well. So sign up today and get the best Bills content out there today. All right, let's go back. It's not that far of a lean for me, but I'm getting too old. I know I'm not actually old, technically speaking, but I'm getting too old to do this. It's rough. So, yeah, let's talk about injuries first. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way first. So, early on in the game, Taron Johnson gets hurt on a collision that included, was it Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, somebody, included a Cardinals player and Taylor Rapp, who was trying to come in and break up the play, just ended up colliding with Taron Johnson. And he has already been ruled out for Thursday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins, which is very disappointing and not what you want to see going against a team like that. However, his replacement, Cam Lewis, it wasn't like great to start, but really once the second quarter and especially into the second half rolled around, looked great, I thought, filling in for that spot. And that is a tough position to be in if you're Cam Lewis, but he did a very good job, I felt.
Yeah, especially in run defense too. Like they were talking about on the broadcast his ability to kind of sneak by those giant linemen and make plays in the backfields at that time. Yeah, Cam Lewis was a little bit of a bright spot on that defense for the second half of that game. Yeah, but losing Taron Johnson, you and I have said it. I don't even know how many times this offseason. Like, he's the one guy we can't lose. And of course, again, classic Bills fashion, 7 snaps into the season, we might lose Taron Johnson for an extended period of time. And putting on my little conspiracy theory hat here, the fact that he's already out for Thursday's game doesn't bode well for his status moving forward. Like, there's something wrong enough where they said there's just no chance. He's no way were we going to try. He's out Thursday. I hope that it's just like, look, it's too quick of a turnaround for whatever injury, and then he'll come back. We have a 10-day gap, I guess. But I'm very concerned right now with the lack of Taron Johnson, because regardless of how good Cam Lewis played, Taron Johnson might be the best nickel corner in the NFL, and losing him as well as Matt Milano, I just oh my God, already 2 big injuries to the defense to start this season.
Yeah, it's not great. I don't love it. I wish it did not happen. It's a difficult position to be in, but the Bills have also put themselves in a position where it's not necessarily catastrophic.
Yeah.
Like, there's teams that they can face, like the Cardinals, where where it's fine if Cam Lewis is playing, and maybe against the Dolphins it'll be similar, but I don't know. It's still Cam Lewis, and he's still going to be limited as a player. And at the end of the day, he's just not going to do the things that Taron Johnson can do, because he doesn't have the same physicality of Taron Johnson. He doesn't have the same football IQ. And it's not a knock against Cam Lewis, who is like a perfectly decent player, especially given his skill set and where he came from. But there is a reason why Taron Johnson is the starter, right? And was a second team All-Pro at the nickel position last year. So it sucks. I wish it were different. It's not, though. And it could be worse, but it's going to be something that they're going to have to look at. I will say, though, them leaving Cam Lewis in that spot and leaving him in that nickel position and staying in that base nickel package that they have was a good vote of confidence in how they feel about him. So yeah, that in itself is a good thing. And I think against the Dolphins, you'll probably see a similar game plan. I don't think they'd roll with 3 linebackers more often against the Dolphins. That's like one of the only teams I would think you absolutely should not be doing that with.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough situation, but they have put themselves in a spot where it may not be completely devastating.
Yeah, and I think it was Sean McDermott that said it. I don't even remember, or maybe I just dreamt this, but Cam Lewis was supposed to play the dime backer in this game, and they had to pivot, and we're like, all right, you're nickel now, because without Taron Johnson, you're our best option there. And my belief is that's what resulted in Jamarcus Ingram, who was essentially playing the dime backer position. So the fact that the Bills said, like, oh, we had this one role for Cam locked in, like that's what they did prep for all week, and then they put him into the nickel role. That's part of the reason he probably struggled in the first half a little bit.
Sure.
Got to the locker room and they're like, all right, here's what we're seeing, kind of coached him up a little bit to literally change positions mid-game, and he essentially, I guess, raised to the task there. And then also Jamarcus Ingram to some extent was impressive too, stepping into that role as a dime backer. And it makes me really interested to see what the Bills' plan is, assuming Taron Johnson, is out for an extended period of time. But against the Dolphins in particular, I presume Cam Lewis is still going to be in that nickel role, especially with how he played in this game. And then the next question is, who's going to play in that dime back role? Are they going to stick with Jamarcus Ingram, or do we see them activate Cole Bishop and play Cole Bishop, something like that? So I'm very interested in what's going to happen here for the Bills defense over the coming weeks.
I would think that they might activate Cole Bishop, assuming they feel like he's ready. I don't know, like, if they necessarily feel totally comfortable just 4 days removed after not activating him, or I don't know what the thought process was necessarily with that. But it's a tough position, and I think you'll probably see more Mike Edwards or more of Mike Edwards in this Dolphins game. We'll see what happens. But since you bring up Jamarcus Ingram, like, him being in that position on the fourth down that ended the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And could it have been called pass interference? Yes. I think the only reason it wasn't was because he actually managed to turn his head around while he was going for the ball. And the ref's just like, he did technically do what he's supposed to do, and it wasn't like such egregious contact, and I'm not going to call this.
Yeah.
And, not to kind of beat a dead horse that we've been beating for the last however many years, but there are no good NFL referees. I'm done trying to pretend that, like, oh, this crew is like worse than this one, or they don't do this right. It's like, no, they're just bad.
Yeah.
They're just all bad. I don't know how else to put it other than they're all bad. They're all inconsistent. They're all over the place, and sucks.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I'll say, like, I agree with you. Like, that Jamarcus Ingram, look, if they threw the flag there, I think that I would have been pissed, but I also would have been like, you know what, letter of the law. Yeah, it's probably pass interference to some extent, but I like that they let them play because there wasn't like malintent there from Jamarcus Ingram. Right. He was trying to make a play on the ball. So to me, you have to let that play. And it would be much more difficult for me to say this in the inverse if the Bills didn't get the call. But at the same time, I do think that I would be able to get to that point at some point, being like, look, you're just not going to get that call. Like, it was a good play by Jamarcus Ingram. But as you were saying that too, and brought up Mike Edwards, one thing that kind of I didn't think about until just now, Mike Edwards and Kyer Elam, two DBs that were both active. They both saw special team snaps this game. They had the option to use one or both of those when Taron Johnson went down to fill that dime backer role or the nickel role. And they said, nope, we'll go with Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram, which says something, especially in that dime backer role, because that's one that Mike Edwards, I believe, has played at points in his career. Yeah. And the Bills were just like, nah, we trust Jamarcus, which might have to do with the injury, might have to do with ramping up in the playbook to some extent, but like just very interesting personnel choices by Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich. I mean, it worked. Honestly, it worked because they figured it out in the second half. As bad as the first half was, that defense was very good in the second half.
It really was. And it was pretty impressive how different it was from the first half to the second half, largely because they were just more aggressive. They decided that, okay, if the 4-man rush is not going to provide pressure, or they just can't contain him consistently enough, we're just going to basically speed up the process for him, and we're just going to make him clutch onto the ball for a second, make him think about running, and then by then we should be able to collapse this, or at least force him into a bad decision or a bad throw. And that's what happened, right? Like the second half, the Cardinals offense did very, very little.
Yeah. And
given how easy it was for them in the first half, it was an extremely impressive showing in the second half by the Bills defense. Before we get too much further, I've not done any comments yet, and we're going to do that now. We're getting complaints, not about us. Thank you for that. But about ads on YouTube. Instead of 2 ads, they've upped it to 3, and they're longer, which don't love that. God, YouTube is such a necessary evil, unfortunately. I wish there was a better way of doing this, honestly, but it is what it is, unfortunately. Roy Collins says, holy shit, this game should not have to be or should not have been so stressful. You say that, and I don't totally disagree with that, largely because of the kick return that happened.
Yeah.
That I kind of alluded to it earlier when I said it looked like at one point this game was going to be not so stressful, and then that happened immediately after they went up 2 scores, and I was like, oh my god, they just can't let me keep my heart rate down. They have to just accelerate everything. They have to take everything to a 10. Yeah, that was a frustrating part of the game, but honestly, I don't know how many other games you watched throughout the day. I assume you're like me, where you're just planted on a couch for 12 straight hours, essentially.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And I live with my parents, and we have Sunday ticket, and so for that afternoon slate, when there were only 4 games, of course I have multi-view on, and that just plays right into my short attention span of like, okay, this play's over. There's a play going on here. I'm going to switch over to that. Okay, there's a play going on here. All right, there's a play going on here. I'll have the audio on that on while I watch this play. That way I can kind of keep. I'm just like, yeah. And especially for that 4 o'clock slate, which was not very good. That kind of worked out for itself. But
yeah, I was watching. I got Sunday ticket for the first time ever, and I ran into that multi-view, and I was like, "What is this beautiful, beautiful thing that I found?" And I first had 4 games on, and I was like, "No, this is impossible. I can't do this. The 4 games is too many." And I was like, "All right, I gotta try. I tried 3. 3 just still didn't work. 2 was the perfect spot for me because I could switch back and forth. I literally couldn't focus on 3 or 4 games, but it was awesome. I will say this though, like kind of connecting this to the Bills a little bit. I was talking to some coworkers today, and they were asking how I enjoyed my weekend. And I was like, throughout the drought era of watching the Bills games, I'd always watch the Bills game and then go watch another game at some point and be like, how are they doing all of that? The Bills can never do that. What the hell is going on here? Now I watch the Bills game and then I go try to watch something like Broncos Seahawks. And I'm like, this is disgusting, dude. Like, these guys are terrible at football. And it's almost every game I watch is like that. And it just reminds me how spoiled I am that the Bills have Josh Allen at this point, because he does things that literally no one else on earth does, which is awesome.
Watching Bo Nix yesterday,
oh god, man,
was physically excruciating.
Yeah,
and I didn't hate that pick. And I watched that game and I was like, oh my god, this is bad. This is about as bad as it could have been. If your name was not Bryce Young, who also, like, we're entering into some bad territory with Bryce Young. Yeah. We're entering into some like historically bad territory with Bryce Young, and I feel bad for the guy. I don't think it's entirely his fault. It's not really his fault that he's only 5'9" and got taken first overall after a ridiculous trade. But still, this is bad. Anyway, let's see. What else are people saying here? Go Bills. I agree. Go Bills. That's why we're here. Right? Thank you, C Rose. Just the tip of canoe. What it do. Thank you for joining us as always. Roy Collins also says, wonder if they bring up Daquan Hardy from the practice squad. That probably is the move, I would think.
It makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it would be another guy to have. So they have Codrington deep, who had a nice return yesterday. Which very, very quick aside, I promise. Very quick aside. Weird special teams in yesterday's game. Weird special teams kind of throughout that whole slate of games yesterday. Yeah. There was a lot of special between like the big return that Codrington had, the DJ Dallas kick return for a touchdown. The Saints had a long punt return with Rashid Shaheed. The Bears blocked a punt and returned it for a touchdown because the Bears offense couldn't do anything yesterday. And the Cowboys had a punt return for a touchdown. A lot of special teams plays yesterday. It was very weird. And you know, you would have assumed if I had said, oh yeah, week 1's going to have a lot of special teams plays happening. It's like, oh yeah, because of the kickoff. And it's like some of it, but a lot of it came on punts. It was just kind of funny how all this sort of happened in the first week. Anyway. Can
I also add to why they had to have told all the announcers, look guys, you got to call it the dynamic kickoff. You got to call it. And every single time they said it, oh no, Oh my God. And also just to bring this up too, the announcers in the Bills game, I was going to lose my damn mind every single time they did the kickoff because the announcers were like, oh, we're for the first time ever, there's going to be a 12th man on the field that's legal. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing to even be
Jay
talking about.
Feely was hitting that point so hard. And it's funny because the play-by-play guy was Tom McCarthy, who does Phillies games throughout the regular season. And Tom McCarthy, for those who don't watch Philadelphia Phillies games and don't experience what that is like, that's fine. Baseball's a long season. I don't, and you may not be a Phillies person, whatever. He's often paired with former Phillies player John Kruk. And if you were to look up on YouTube, just John Kruk best moments, like TV or something like that, you will find a deeply entertaining treasure trove of the musings of a madman, essentially. And yet you just can't help but listen and love it. So, but he's a perfect balance to that because Tom McCarthy is just very, very pros pro. And like he tried to go along with the Jay Feely thing, but especially the second time he did it, he was like, all right, guy, let's settle down. That's enough. We got it. I get it. We all get it. Stop. It was just kind of funny seeing that all play out. Roy Collins also says, so the best NFL ref is a retired one. You say that, I don't disagree, but then they some of them end up being these like rules analysts on TV, and they're almost always bad.
Who was the guy a few years ago? I forgot which one it was on. It was the worst segment whenever he was so bad on camera. He gets so nervous. Carrie, I can't remember his name.
It's not okay. I keep thinking of Booger McFarland.
No,
it's not him, but it's a sort of similar weird name. Oh, I can't think of his name. I know who you're talking about though. Spin 0481 says, I don't think Bills know how to play games and not make them stressful. This team, we should be easy. Let's make it a challenge on them come back from 14 points. Listen, we talked about this last week. You have the name?
It was Mike Carey was the name of the guy.
Mike Carey. I was thinking
he was bad. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, yeah. So we talked about this last week, that the Cardinals are a potentially spicy team, potentially a playoff team. And the result of this game is more or less what we thought might happen, even if the journey of how we got to that final result wasn't exactly what we thought it was going to be. And when Arizona got out to that 17-3 lead, I was like, oh my gosh, they might actually lose this game. I don't like this. It was literally barring just being in a deeper deficit, it was about the worst case scenario, except for the fact that the Bills weren't even bad offensively in the first half. Just Arizona had the ball for that first drive for so long.
Yeah.
And then the Bills get the big return, which set them up great in field position. They rip off 9 yards, then 3 yards, then 14 yards, and then just a Josh Allen fumble. Just brain shut off for a second and completely forgot where he was and fumbled the ball. And then Arizona went on yet another long drive that basically ended the quarter. And so you've gone through the first quarter with only 4 plays, and it was just tough. And then you go on a drive of your own, and you get a touchdown that gets called back on a penalty, which, for the record, was the right call.
Yes.
To their credit, that was a correct call. But it also meant that they had to settle for a field goal. So you have a long drive that ends in a field goal, and then they get another touchdown. And so you really just got the sense of dread of like, oh my gosh, they might actually lose this game, and it's going to be rough. Now, at that time, 2 other things were happening that were equally good and bad. One was Stephon Diggs scoring multiple touchdowns for the Texans, and it felt deliberate. It felt deliberate by the CBS broadcasters to cut away to highlights of that game to show Stephon Diggs specifically scoring touchdowns for the Texans. Didn't appreciate that. Did not appreciate that. The other thing that was happening, though, was Miami was losing to the Jaguars. And not even like a shootout type of game. It was just a defensive struggle for both of those teams. Obviously the Jaguars did the Jaguars thing and
Of course.
blew that lead because that's what they
Unsurprising.
did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot going on at that point in time. But end of the first half, they go down, they score a touchdown. Great. You're in position and you get the ball in the second half, which was great. And then they go down and they get that double dip. It was like, this is why you do literally exactly why you do that strategy, right? Double dip, get the touchdown at the end of the first half, come back at the beginning of the second half, touchdown again, put them in position. And you just immediately felt like, all right, they've got it. They've got it. They've got it. Defense has to make a stop though. And they did. They really did.
Yeah. I honestly, when they were down 17-3 and they got the ball back, I just have the time up here. I didn't memorize this, but they had 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. I think I even tweeted it out like they have to score here. And essentially, in my head, at least, I was like, they need a touchdown here. Otherwise, I could probably chalk this game up to being a loss because they needed the double dip. And Josh Allen just methodically drove them down the field, took time off the clock to a point where once they gave it back to Arizona, there was no even attempting to go for it. And the Bills going halftime down 10-17 coming out of the half. It's like, all right, Josh, do that again. And lo and behold, he does that again, ending that drive with a absolute dime to Mac Hollins, like literally a perfect ball to Mac Hollins. Yeah, at that point, the momentum had swung and the Bills were kind of off to the races. But even at 17-17, now I was confident that the Bills were going to find a way to win this game. And then they kept scoring. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a blowout now. And of course, towards the end, they just start goofing up on a couple different things. And suddenly Arizona's in it to win it, which was, again, terrifying. But the Bills always do this to us.
They do. And it's frustrating and it's annoying. But again, like we said last week, right? This is one of these games that maybe to the average viewer would be like, why were the Bills so close in this game? It doesn't make any sense. Like, Arizona's not that good. And then by the end of the season, people will look back at that first game and be like, ooh, like that was two like really good teams going at it in week one. So yeah, it's also possible that Arizona just isn't that great. And you saw like just how fragile and not very good that defense is because the only one that was really making plays consistently was Budda Baker.
Yeah.
And, you know, the strip sack that they had of Allen early on was kind of just the anomaly of that game because they didn't really get that consistent of pressure. At least I didn't. It didn't seem that way. I don't know what the actual numbers are for that, but yeah, it was a very good comeback, both offensively and defensively for this team overall.
Yeah, even if I go look through the drives, like the Bills, when they had the ball, essentially did whatever they want throughout the entire game. The only reason they didn't score more than 34 points was because of that fumble and because of penalties that kept just penalty after penalty after penalty, and they were procedure penalties too. So to some extent, like I can't even get mad at the refs when the Bills are false starting like they were. I don't know why I just said starting like that. Anyway,
I was gonna let it go, but
yeah. So it was the Bills on offense did what I expected them to do, which was dominate a bad defense, because I truly do believe the Cardinals have a bad defense, and that's something you'll see all year. The Bills on defense, though they struggled at first, that towards the end of the game, they dominated what I believe is going to be a really good offense. So to that end, the Cardinals are going to be really interesting to follow the remainder of the year. Next week, they have the Rams, then the Lions, and then the Commanders. Watching those three games and getting a grasp of how good the Cardinals are might be indicative of how good the Bills are. Week one being a little bit weird, but if the Cardinals go, they're hosting the Rams, and they go and put up 30 points on the Rams, then I think we can sit here and say, like, maybe the Bills' defense is actually pretty good, and they just ran into a team that is also pretty good on the opposite side of the ball.
Side note, the Rams last night, their defense, like, I was not expecting that game to be that physical from both sides.
Yeah.
I was so impressed by the Rams defense last night, by how physical and tough they were against a very physical and tough Lions team. I was expecting them to kind of just roll over without Aaron Donald. And I'm like, and a new defensive coordinator too, a first-time defensive coordinator. I'm just like, I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is like, anyway, it's a fun side note that I saw from last night. In classic fashion on this show, I not only got incredibly distracted right off the bat and immediately just sort of looped my way around wherever I wanted to go. I also just completely forgot that there were show notes that were that were written down. So we're gonna go back a little bit. First thing is Spencer Brown extension, 4 years. The details of which have not yet been released, which is a little curious, but also generally a sign that this is a not like market busting type of deal, which is a good thing for the Bills and a good thing for Spencer Brown in the sense that he actually, earned this extension and that this team feels confident in him as a player moving forward. And I think that he is really taken to Aaron Kromer as his offensive line coach really well, and really taken those particular coaching points really well. Like, especially like just even when the Bills were down, you could just see the displacement that offensive line as a whole was getting on run plays in particular. They were just moving that Cardinals defense, and they were really consistent running the ball. And I know some people may not like the fact that they're a running team, but those particular people can suck it, quite frankly, because you have to run the football nowadays. You just do. And I know that we're all kind of, some people are still kind of like, air raid pilled. Hold on. That sounds like an insult to the air raid hour that comes up after us. It's not, I promise. Don't start shit talking me to Steve. I don't need that.
No.
But, the whole, like, you have to win through the passing game. It's quarterbacks. Like, all that is still true to a point, but defense has just got to a point where it's like, you know what? I really don't care if you can run the ball, because odds are most of you can't. So we're just going to play too deep. We're going to keep you from getting these big, huge plays on us. And we'll see if you can actually run the ball. And for the most part, some teams just really aren't capable of doing that. Other teams, though, and the Bills really are kind of ahead of the curve, I think, in terms of the rest of the NFL kind of trying to catch up to this to some extent or another. But they really are pivoting more to being a run-first team and being aggressive in that sense. People don't like it because it seems old school, and because the Bills have a defensive head coach. Oh, he just wants to run the ball and play a bunch of close games. And it's like, they scored 34 points. And none of that came from like a defensive score. None of that came from a special team score. 34 offensive points. That's not a conservative coach. It's just not. And it's not a conservative offense. It's a smart offense. It's an offense that is able to dictate what they want, and using the ground game as part of that to set up the passing game. It is old school in that sense, but it's not old school in that we're running everything under center, in that the passing game is just like these very old school pro style concepts that are, you go to this read and then this read and then this read, or then you check it down. It's like, it's not really what this is. It's not what it is. It's a modern attack that does a really good job of dictating to the defense that's in front of them.
Yeah, I thought Joe Brady called a really good game yesterday, because he leveraged the run game, which, to your point, and to a lot of things I've seen on Twitter, people being mad about the Bills running the ball. Though last year when the Bills ran the ball against the Cowboys, no one seemed to complain when we absolutely demolished it, which honestly, there were people that complained. It was just as stupid then as it is now. But Joe Brady leveraging the run game to just absolutely beat up that Cardinals front and do it over and over and over again. And then his essentially backup to that is like, all right, Josh, now you go do Josh Allen things. Like, that's what I want this offense to be. I want it to be Josh doesn't have to do everything. He can rely on something else. And James Cook yesterday looked phenomenal, better than I thought he would look. He looked phenomenal yesterday. And then at points they'd be like, all right, Josh, you'll drop back. Oh, you feel a little pressure, do whatever the hell you want. He'd run out of the pocket, make great throws, sometimes scramble. Like, that's what I want the Bills offense to be. Almost exactly what we saw yesterday is what I hope they are for the entire season, because it's a really, really good and really, really fun offense. Josh had 4 touchdowns. He had like a near 80% completion percentage. He had the 1 turnover that was just him being stupid and getting a little bit cute in the pocket there. Like that offense was really good and really fun yesterday. Again, the Cardinals defense not great, but so what? Like you don't put up 34 points typically on NFL teams. Like that's not a consistent thing that happens week in and week out for every single team. Putting up 34 points on anybody, whether it's even if it's the Carolina Panthers, honestly, they might be the exception. 34 points is a good game, and I think Brady called a great game. And I love this offense right now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. On Josh Allen's second rushing attempt, the leaping touchdown, which is the thumbnail of this show, he injured his hand. They have already said he will be able to play against Miami, so there's no concern in terms of whether or not he will play. It's more how will this affect him? And when it comes to your non-throwing hand, it's really more about like taking handoffs, giving handoffs. And you saw at one point yesterday, I think it was like the handoff after he had injured it, and he had to basically kind of just push it into James Cook's stomach with both hands. It's not ideal. You wish something better had happened there. It didn't, and it could have been worse. It could have been, he landed like palm down and maybe it hit, breaks his elbow or something. Yeah, I don't know what could happen there, but it could have been worse. And hopefully this is something that they'll be able to just sort of deal with, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday when he did get hurt and the broadcast was like, oh, is he going to put? I was like, there's 0% chance. It's his left hand. There's a 0% chance he's coming out of this game. Like they need to close this one out. And they showed Mitch Trubisky throwing on the sideline. Even then, I'm like, yeah, of course. Like Mitch should get up and throw just in case something does happen. Like heat up your arm a little bit. But there was no way Josh was coming out. And now, like there was speculation all morning of, will Josh be able to go? There was some rumors of injured reserve happening. And I was like, what are we doing? This is the guy who just plays through everything. He played through a torn UCL or partially torn UCL. Like if his left hand
in his throwing
shattered,
elbow,
yes, he's not coming out of a game for his left hand or missing games in the season for his left hand. It could be shattered and just a meat bag with broken bones inside it. And he'll just wrap it up and say, I got the right hand. That's more than enough. And how funny is it now? Like it's kind of funny to some extent. Like I have had fans all off season of opposing teams saying things to me like, well, if you take away Josh Allen's legs, then he's not as good. And it's like, all right, well, we didn't take his legs away, but we took one of his hands away. So now he only has 1 hand and 2 feet. Let's see how good he is still. Like oh my God. It could have been really, really bad. It also like watching Josh Allen hurdle people. My thought is like, I can't remember another quarterback recently hurdling somebody. And Josh just does it all the time. Like, what is this guy? He's one of the most ridiculous athletes I've ever seen on a football field. And I know I'm waxing poetic about my quarterback or the quarterback of the team I root for. But if you don't love watching Josh Allen play football, either you're a hater or I don't understand. You just don't like fun. Because he is the most fun player in the NFL, like fun player in the NFL. I'm not saying best. I'm saying fun because he's legitimately incredibly fun to watch.
The only people that like hate Josh Allen, I think, are the fans of whoever he's playing against.
Yeah,
because it's just it's sort of what we all feel when the Bills play Mahomes. It's sort of just like, what are you supposed to do against this dude?
On, man.
What? It doesn't matter. Anyway. It's that same sort of feeling, right? And I think Chiefs fans also acknowledge that with Josh Allen, where it's like, this is the only guy that makes me feel like we're going against Mahomes or something like that, right? It's just wild, and it's what makes him great. And I wish he didn't get hurt like that, but could have been worse.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's already cleared, good to go, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, and just to kind of close this out, like Roy Lopez, he's the nose tackle for the Cardinals. Like they were interviewing him, and he was like grinning, talking about Josh Allen, saying like, "Yeah, man, that guy's just gonna do whatever it is he's gonna do. He's incredible." And it's like the players on the other teams, realize how good he is, except for those 13 bozos that called him underrated. So
who are these people, by the way? They
Dude.
need to be exposed. They need to put their claims on the line and just say, yeah, this is what I said. And you know what? I stick by it. I know I'm wrong, but I'm going to stick by it anyway.
Yeah, man. It's probably like, what's his name? It's probably like Justin Simmons, who he jumped over, L'Jarius Sneed, who he jumped over, Anthony Barr, who he jumped over, Kiko Alonso probably somehow made a vote for this because he made him look like a fool. Like, it's probably guys that he's just made look stupid, or just all Dolphins fans or Dolphins players that are just pissed about him because Jalen Ramsey, the fact that people could call him overrated. And you brought up the Chiefs too. And like Chris Jones in a couple years ago in the NFL 100 talking about Josh Allen, he's like, that boy nasty. Like the Chiefs also realized too, regardless of what some of their fans want to pretend that Josh Allen isn't a threat to them, the Chiefs themselves also realized like he's the one guy. Like he's the one guy we're scared of because he can do it. We're not scared of the Bills, but we're scared of that guy. So anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with Josh against the Chiefs.
Keon Shakachaki says Josh Allen haters hate football and are probably European. I can neither confirm nor deny that particular accusation. As for tonight, in about a half hour, you got Jets 49ers. Here's the funny thing. The Bills, Dolphins, and Patriots have all won their first game. And if the Jets don't win this game, they're last in this division, which isn't going to last. We know that.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny that we've ended up in this particular spot. And the Patriots winning that game, I knew going into this that the Bengals were going to be like everyone's survivor pick. I think I saw on some site it was like 46% of people doing this sort of thing had picked the Bengals. And I was like, I understand the thought process, right? You're trying, you don't know what the season is going to be like. You're trying to pick a game that you know is going to go your way. The Bengals are clearly a better team than the Patriots. Here's the thing, though. Nobody ever tells the Bengals that the season starts in September because they always suck in September. And it's astounding how bad they are in September. I think the last good September that they had under Zach Taylor was probably that Super Bowl run that they had when they started off like 3-1 or something like that. It is incredible how unprepared and lackluster the Bengals look in September every single season under Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow.
I just like went through their seasons. It like 2021, they started the season 1-1, and that's the best start. Like they haven't started 2-0 in the Joe Burrow era, and they usually play very poorly in September. That being said, like, and I am not high on the Bengals. I have not been high on them.
Right.
Again, as a vibes guy, which I guess I've become this year, the vibes there are really, really bad.
Joe Burrow still has that dyed blonde hair. And I'm telling you, that is a man in crisis. And after this season is over, sometime in the off season, there's going to be some sort of like long form article talking about what's been going on there. And like, I hope that's not the case. I hope I am literally just projecting all of this on here. But you heard it here first, if I'm right. I'm just saying.
Dude, there was some report. I forgot. There was like a Browns reporter or something that said that on the sideline he was constantly flexing that hand, his throwing hand, the one he injured last year, and trying to stretch out his wrist, and there's swelling in it, and like that to me is terrible. If he's dealing with an injury that is going to cause him issues still after all this time rehabbing from it. But something is weird there with Joe Burrow. That's not saying he won't come back and be good this season, because he was really, really bad at the start of last season because he was dealing with an injury. He eventually put it back together, and then he ended up getting hurt again. But like, Joe Burrow didn't look great yesterday. Jamar Chase is just we didn't like what Stephon Diggs did to the Bills to some extent. Like Jamar Chase seems like a nightmare to deal with, but in his defense, the Bengals also just don't pay people. So he's probably like, you have to pay me. And the Bengals are like, we do literally have $0. We have negative money in our bank account. We cannot pay you. And he's just going to be a salty boy for the remainder of the year.
Do we think someone in the Bengals organization saw that that Chase like infinite money glitch? I don't know if you're on the internet.
The Chase. That is good.
Do you think someone in the Bengals organization was like, I know this is fraud, but I'm clipping that. That's going up tomorrow. I don't care. Yeah. But anyway, moving off of non-Bills stuff. We already talked about the offense. And Josh Allen finished the day 18 of 23, 232 passing yards, 39 rushing yards, 2 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns. He has 4 games now where he's had 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. He's the only player in NFL history to be able to do that.
Tied with Steve Young.
Oh, is he tied with Steve Young?
Yes,
I thought he stood alone. My bad. No. And 1 fumble loss. No interceptions. James Cook, super consistent as he's been. Over 100 scrimmage yards, which is what we expected. Keon Coleman led this team in targets. Could not have possibly guessed that. I was as surprised as everyone else when I saw that. He had 5 targets. He had 4 catches for 51 yards, including a play that was like, that's it. That's why you're here. To do literally exactly that. And he got interfered with on that play, and they didn't call it. Mm-hmm. But it was a very impressive catch. And then outside of that, he was just a part of the offense. They weren't necessarily like dialing plays up for him, although as soon as he made that deep fade catch, they went hurry up and they were like, all right, we're coming right back to you with this fade in the end zone. And they really tried. We all knew they were going to try to do that. Didn't work out, but it will. I think it was a very, very good start for a rookie receiver that I think we all, of course, sort of assumed was like, he'll get worked in eventually, but he just looked like he was a part of this offense. I thought that was very encouraging.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head, man. Like when he made that catch, it was that's why we drafted him. And that's also what we've been missing to some extent. Like just throw it up, let him go get it. Diggs did it at points, but that wasn't Diggs' bread and butter, was going up to get a ball like that. And that was a great catch by Coleman. And then throughout the day, the 3 other catches he had were nice little catches. Like that was a really solid first game for a rookie. And 51 yards is nothing to scoff at. If you pace that out for the entire year, that's 850 yards. I just did that math in my head just to brag to all of you of how good I am at mental math. If you pace that out for the entire year, 850. If he ends the year with 850 yards, that is a success for Keon Coleman. That's a big success for Keon Coleman. So exciting, very excited to see how he fit into the offense and how well he played yesterday.
Yeah, it was a really good first game. I thought it was super impressive. As Walter S. says here, it's a nice confidence builder for Coleman. It was a good first game. I really liked what he was able to do. Beyond that, the disappointing part was really just that Dalton Kincaid and Curtis Samuel only had 1 catch each. There were, when you look back at that game, there were definitely plays in which Kincaid was the primary target, should have gotten the ball, just ended up not happening. And it sucks. Sometimes that happens, though. Mm-hmm. And I would still feel very, very confident in the fact that he will be a big primary part of the passing game. So I'm not going to sit here and panic about this just yet. As for Curtis Samuel, I don't know if this is necessarily related to his turf toe injury. He seemed to move fine. It didn't seem like there was any like limping or like he was coming off when he didn't need to or whatever. It just wasn't necessarily his game to have. It was much more about running the football, as was indicated by how many times they ran it versus how many times they threw it. 33 rushes to 23 passes. So it is what it is. And the run game was successful. And that's how it should be. You go with what's working. You go with what's being successful. And to be fair, they were successful in the passing game as well. It was just that it was very spread out. Matt Collins got some targets. Dawson Knox got targets as well. Like it was fine. You hope for more catches for everyone, like especially Kincaid and Samuel, but I think those will come eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the biggest surprise in the receiving core for me, Curtis Samuel had a low snap count. I don't know if it had to do with the injury or not. I think that I'm more on the line of it just had to do with the game plan, because Matt Collins was, I think I'm just looking at it now, second among wide receivers in snap share at 58%. I didn't expect that. I did not expect Matt Collins to play as much as he did, and he looked good. He looked good as a receiver. I thought he was legitimately going to just be a special teams player that the Bills were like, all right, if one of our top three gets hurt, maybe we rotate Matt Collins in. But he played more than that because he's a good blocker too. So they leveraged Matt Collins' skill sets pretty well yesterday. You know, Khalil Shakir, I don't know what else to say about him. I mean, the guy just, like, you can hit him. It doesn't matter who hits him. Like, you could have prime Ray Lewis come full speed from 40 yards out and hit him, and he's not going to fall down. He's just going to bounce off it and keep running. Like, he's nuts. It's wild. I really haven't seen somebody with contact balance like him since, I can't even think of somebody that it would be like. Dude, yeah, what a game by Khalil Shakir. It was just awesome to see him play like that.
So I definitely had like if you've ever been to a high school football game and you're sitting in the stands, there's always at least one, if not multiple moms. It's always moms that are basically trying to speak into existence the good things that they want to have happen, or just like reaffirming things that they're just trying to be supportive, as moms are wont to do. I definitely had that moment yesterday. As soon as Shakir caught that ball, I was like, touchdown. He's got it. He's got it. Even though there's like one tackler here. I was like, got it. And then he actually got, I was like, oh, he got it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those moments where it's like, brain was not thinking, words were just coming out. And it was just kind of funny that, like, as soon as he scored, I was like, oh, he actually scored.
Yeah, he just like runs so low, like he runs so low to the ground. It's a really weird running style, but
it's not even like he's a big guy either. He's kind of lanky, and it just works though. I don't know what it is. He just finds a way to bounce off some dudes, and it's really impressive. And again, this was going back to when he was drafted. This is somebody that, like, people really liked coming out of that draft, but for whatever reason, he just fell into the 5th round. And maybe it was size, maybe it was coming from Boise State. It's not like Boise State is like a bad school or anything. So it was just odd. Everyone that was looking at that draft and saw that the Bills had taken Khalil Shakir in the 5th round was like, that might be the best pick of this draft for them. Yeah. And I don't know. It might end up being the best pick of that draft for them. I can't think who. So that was Shakir, James Cook. So already got a Pro Bowler for that. Terrell Bernard. No, I don't know if that's the best pick. Man, what a great draft! That Brandon B guy sure can draft, can't he?
Dude, and think about that draft too, and Bills fans' reactions to that draft. Yeah. And then just
Bills fans, my reactions. Are you kidding me? I didn't care for James Cook, especially in the 2nd round. I thought that was dumb. And then with Terrell Bernard, I was like, okay, love just setting picks on fire. Love setting 3rd round picks on fire. And now I'm like, oh, James Cook is a Pro Bowl back, and Terrell Bernard should have been an All-Pro last year.
And Christian Benford was in that draft.
And Christian Benford. Like, it's just, what a draft, man. Just great.
Yeah, but people only complain because Kyer Elam was the first overall pick. We'll just ignore the fact that they found 3 more starters later in the draft, 2 of whom have already played at an All-Pro level in James Cook. Hell with it. James Cook did kind of play at an All-Pro level last year. He finished 6th in scrimmage yards. Like, yeah, that was a great draft, 2022 for sure. I think David might have froze.
Much about.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. Let's talk about defense, because we haven't talked much about defense. Gotta talk about the man of the hour. That's Greg Rousseau, who had such a good game. 3 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 6 total tackles. Dominant game from Greg Rousseau. Did his normal run defense stuff and dominated as a pass rusher. For someone who's angling for a new contract, that's as good a start as you could possibly get if you're Greg Rousseau.
Yeah, and I'll throw one thing out there too. So this is always something that kind of confused me a little bit. Sacks or tackles, sorry, sacks do not count as tackles for loss. That's a separate statistic entirely. Yes. So Greg Rousseau had 6 tackles total yesterday. All 6 occurred behind the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
That you don't get much more dominant than that as a defensive end. Greg Rousseau, we saw what he did in the Steelers preseason game, and I think that was kind of foreshadowing what he could possibly be and what he could possibly do. But it was preseason, so we couldn't get super, super excited about it. We could be like, oh, this could be good. What he did yesterday to that Cardinals offensive line was legitimately dominant. And he better win player of the week. They're going to try to give it to TJ Watt. I know they're going to try to give it to TJ Watt. But the game that Greg Rousseau had yesterday was elite level football play. And now going up against the Miami Dolphins on Thursday, if he puts another 2 sacks on the board against the Dolphins, then you're going to have to put this guy in Defensive Player of the Year watch, because that's how dominant he was yesterday. I want to see it continue, but damn, was it a good start to the season.
Such a good start to the season for him. It's just an amazing performance from him. Exactly what we wanted to see. And on top of that, another player that we wanted to have a good performance and we talked about it last week, like that true X factor of this game was Von Miller, and he showed up because he was pressuring Kyler Murray early and often. I mean, it didn't necessarily result in a whole lot in the first half, just because the defense as a whole wasn't quite performing well in the first half. But in the second half in particular, I mean, getting that first sack was just like pretty close to vintage Von Miller that we wanted to see. And it already in this first week, he has contributed more than all of last season. And it feels good saying like, okay, he is capable of playing. He can make impact plays. He can do the things that they are paying him to do. That's what made me excited about seeing Von Miller yesterday, which is like, okay, the reports of training camp were not a lie. He's here. He's doing what he needs to do. He's moving well. He can still bend. He can still do the things that he needs to do. Good first week for Von Miller.
Yeah, I mean, anything from Von Miller this year, I think, is kind of like a little extra to this Bills defense, because coming in, at least the way that my mind was working and projecting what this defense could be, it essentially assumed Von Miller, as much as I had some sort of belief that Von would come back a little bit, I wasn't going to rely on him to be super productive this year. It was like, that'll be extra if he is. And the first game was a good start. He had a sack. He looked good. He was chasing down Kyler Murray pretty well. I mean, it's not that easy to chase down Kyler Murray either, and Von did a pretty good job at it. So he's going to be an integral part of this rotation for the remainder of the season, which is really good news for the Bills. And one thing I'll point out in regards to the rotation is the Bills have been rotation heavy under Sean McDermott for years and years now. They didn't rotate as much yesterday. Looking at just the snap share, and these numbers, maybe they seem low to people, but they aren't. Ed Oliver led all defensive linemen with 82% of the snaps. That's not normal in Sean McDermott defense.
That's not normal across the NFL.
No,
period.
Yeah. Greg Rousseau, 79%. Daquan Jones, 74%. So your top 3 were all over 70%. That just doesn't happen in Sean McDermott, or like you said, any defense across the NFL. The Bills essentially said, okay, here's our 3 best players. We're just not going to take them off the field unless we have to. And it worked to some extent. Early on, there were struggles, but they cleaned it up in the second half. And now going up against a Dolphins offense who has a pretty not great offensive line, especially on the interior, I would expect that snap share to remain very similar. And then I start to think to myself, are the Bills going to be one of those teams where like they just predominantly play a set of guys, like 3 guys, and then they have their rotations in other spots, like AJ Epinesa and Von Miller, Austin Johnson, those guys? It was very interesting first game, but also very exciting one for a defensive line that I think a lot of people nationally are sleeping on.
Yeah. And I think that you kind of nailed it by saying that the assumption coming into this year with Von Miller was just like, you can't really include him in your projections because what are you projecting, right? Like he's coming off a season where he did nothing because he tried to come back from an ACL tear past the age of 33. And now he's 30. He's 35. Am I remembering this correctly? Am I getting the math right?
He's got to be, if not older than that. Yeah.
He's probably 35.
35. Yeah, 35. Good.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's especially at that position with the way that he's been able to win, historically speaking. It's just hard to do. It's hard to be consistent like that. The fact that he has been able to do that and been able to come back and be as effective as he was in week 1 is super, super impressive. I was a big fan of seeing that. I'm really just ecstatic because it means that this extra dimension for this Bills defense, especially with a first-year defensive coordinator, Bobby Babich, now has that dimension. And I'm very happy to see this particular development. We brought up Cam Lewis earlier. He finished the game with 10 tackles, was very impressive filling in for Taron Johnson, especially in the second half. Marvin Harrison Jr., I remarked to you before we started that I was afraid that Marvin Harrison Jr. might have like an Anquan Bolden, first game as a rookie, sets a receiving record right off the top. Like, not that I doubted Rasul Douglas or Christian Benford necessarily in that sense, just that Marvin Harrison Jr. is that kind of player, and that's why they took him 4th overall. But then you watch that game and you're like, oh, he was the one that they took 4th overall? Okay, interesting. But largely just because the Cardinals ran the ball so much, so the passing game wasn't as big of a focus. And when they did throw the ball, it was a lot to Trey McBride, which was expected because of the linebackers, the Bills linebacker situation, and Dorian Williams being in there instead of Matt Milano and blah, blah, blah. But even then, I mean, the Cardinals really attacked this Bills defense the same way that a lot of offenses tend to attack the Bills defense, which was just try to run the ball, which Arizona was very good at last year, and hit stuff underneath and just make them come up and tackle. That's most of what they did. They didn't try to challenge them deep. They didn't try to hit them over the top with a lot of stuff. They just kept things very simple, very in front of them. And it was just, I don't know. It didn't seem like they were taking advantage of the talent that they have, which was a little disappointing as a football fan. It was not disappointing as a Bills fan, but it was a little disappointing as a football fan. I just kind of expecting more dynamic type of offense from the Cardinals instead of what we got, even though what we got was still effective, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I thought we were seeing it. We were seeing what I expect the Cardinals offense to be. We can run it down your throats, and then on top of that, we can rely on Kyler Murray to buy some time in the pocket, escape the pocket, and then deliver a throw here and there. And that's, for the most part, what we saw. The Bills adjusted at halftime, started blitzing up the middle, causing Kyler to get a little bit confused and flustered, and blah, 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 so for, I don't know what I'm trying to say, blah, blah, blah. The Cardinals then struggled in the second half. All that being said, back to Marvin Harrison, like I'm with you. Maybe I didn't expect Anquan Bolden's rookie game, but I expected a damn good game because he's a damn good wide receiver. And that one drop just really stands out to me. I wonder if it was nerves that got to him or something. Like he was just nervous in the first game. But one catch for 4. Like if you told me going into this game, all right, you got Keon Coleman and Marvin Harrison. One of them will have 1 catch for 4 yards, and one of them will have 4 catches for 50 yards. I'd be like, okay, well, Keon had a bad, he struggled a little bit. Right. He only had 1 catch for. No, the exact opposite happened. It's kind of astounding to some extent. And I will give some credit to Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, who helped to basically cause this and create this situation where Marvin Harrison couldn't catch as many balls. So as much as the Bills defense struggled at points, the fact that they were able to lock down different components of the Cardinals offense at different points in time is impressive. And again, the majority of people think the Cardinals are a bad football team. That offense is legitimately good. I'm going to argue it until they prove me wrong. And I don't think they proved me wrong in week 1. I don't think they'll prove me wrong in week 2 either.
Fair enough. Yeah, it was just a weird game for Marvin Harrison. It's a weird game for all three of the receivers that were taken in the top 10. Roma Dunze had one catch off of a deflection, and then he ended up getting hurt. Thankfully, only like a mild MCL sprain, so nothing crazy for him. And Malik Neighbors, I don't know if I'd call that a weird game so much as just the poor, unfortunate victim of Daniel Jones being Daniel Jones. Good God, Daniel Jones is so bad.
It made me, I've said this before and I'll say it again, it made me dislike Joe Shane when that contract was given to Daniel Jones. I thought it was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen done. And now there's these stats flying around. I don't have them off the top of my head here, but in like his last 5 games or something, he's thrown more touchdowns to the opposing team than to his own team. Well, you're reaching a point where it's enough. So who's their backup? Who's the Giants' backup?
It's a very good question, and I thought about this earlier.
It can't be Tommy DeVito, right? It can't be.
It might be. It's certainly possible. It is. Oh no, it's Drew Lock.
Play Drew Lock.
That's right.
Drew Lock needs to play this week. Like that. Yeah, Daniel Jones is awful.
So bad.
But that's what you get, Giants. Yeah. And people were comparing him to Josh Allen just a few years ago too, which still pisses me off.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Never forget. Always have receipts ready. The Bills struggled on third down against the Cardinals. They ended the day 7 of 13. And
the Cardinals,
so it was pretty much, I don't want to say completely 100% in the first half, but it was pretty close to 100% in the first half for the Cardinals. It was a very difficult situation that the Bills put themselves in. Second half, though, they ended up being much, much better, getting critical plays in those situations. And, it wasn't like a total shutdown, but it was about as close as it could have gotten to a complete shutdown in the second half, which was very impressive for this team.
Their drive total, it's interesting to look at the drive totals and see the exact flip here. The first 3 drives for the Cardinals, total yards, 70, 60, 71. These next 6 drives to end the game were -1, -4, 0, 58, -5, 31. So 4 of the last 6 were 0 or fewer yards. So the Bills kind of did what they needed to do and adjusted. They were bad at the beginning, but great for the rest of the game.
Yeah. And goes back to this coaching staff just being really strong, and despite having, relatively young guys in these positions, especially for Bobby Babich, right? This is his first year. This is not Joe Brady's first rodeo. It's not his first time calling plays. This is Bobby Babich's first game, and he got behind early, and they made adjustments. It was really impressive by Bobby Babich to be able to do that. Let's talk about special teams real quick. Tyler Bass hit all of his kicks. Can't ask for more than that. And granted, they weren't necessarily super long kicks, which is fine, in my opinion. He didn't have to make a super long kick, just had to do what he needed to do, and he did it. 4 point after tries were made, 2 field goals were made, and nothing looked like it was like fading one way or the other. It just looked like a normal field goal. And so this is a good start for a particular player that we all had concerns about coming into this season.
Yeah, and the wind was legit from everything we could see during that game. And he did struggle on kickoff a little bit, but so did Matt Prater, the Cardinals kicker as well, especially kicking into the wind. So knowing that the wind was causing issues, I know that all of Tyler Bass's kicks were short, but he did have to contend with a different component than most kickers were probably contending with this weekend in the wind, and he nailed them all. I have to be excited about a kicker going 6 for 6, especially one whose confidence we questioned and who had to play in front of a home crowd, which I think puts a lot more pressure on him than if he was playing in front of an away crowd, just because of how the game ended last season. To start 6-6 is the perfect start for Tyler Bass.
It really was. And it was good that he was able to get himself into a position to succeed, that the Bills put him in a position to succeed, and he was able to come through. Brandon Codrington, who the Bills traded for from the Jets, had a nice return for 53 yards after the Cardinals' first drive, which was really great to see. Didn't really have much to work with after that. Obviously, the Bills gave up a 96-yard, the very first dynamic kickoff
God
return
damn.
for touchdown
It
to
is so
DJ Dallas. That was you could literally see that happening as it developed, just how wide open that running lane was for him. And yeah, not great, especially for a team that wasn't very good on special teams last year and kind of saw the what's the word I'm looking for? De-evolution, degrading. That sounds wrong, but the fall off, we'll call it that, of Tyler Bass, who was once a great kicker. Not great on coverage. Your punter is okay. He was pretty solid yesterday, Sam Martin. In the 2 punts that he had 85 yards, which is pretty good. Yeah, it just was like, why keep this guy? And why keep Matthew Smiley as your special teams coordinator? I don't really have the answer to that. And especially after yesterday, I have fewer answers and even more questions. So it's not great. I don't love this. I don't like that this feels like something that's going to be a persistent problem for the Bills throughout this season. But then again, yesterday, as we brought up before, kind of a weird special teams day across the NFL. Maybe there's just something in the air for this first week, and maybe that changes. But hope is not a plan either. So,
yeah, I think going forward, and I think that they were even doing this yesterday, to be honest, it's going to be Tyler Bass kick the ball out of the back of the end zone every single time. Like, screw it. They can have the ball at the 30-yard line. We don't care. We'd rather them have the ball at the 30-yard line than have DJ Dallas run in for a touchdown. I think that the win truly, truly affected Bass's ability to get the ball out of the back of the end zone. So they tried to get, kind of cheeky with it a little bit. And then later in the game, they tried to do the same thing, and Bass kicked it out of bounds. And so the Cardinals got the ball even closer. But all that being said, I'm not that excited that the Bills struggled on covering the kickoff in the first week of the season, and I just have these dark visions in my head of a kick return touchdown happening at the exact worst time, which was almost this game. Luckily, the Bills still won the game, so I can't really be too upset about that kickoff return in the moment, but it does concern me moving forward.
It's not a great situation, and I wish it were better. Unfortunately, right now, it doesn't look like it will be. So the Bills are just going to have to live with what they made and what they chose to work with. Yeah, that's all I got for that. Do we want to quickly talk about the Dolphins game as the Jets-Niners game is about to start?
Yeah, let's hit up a quick Dolphins discussion. Yeah.
So Dolphins walk off the Jags yesterday on a long field goal by Jason Sanders. It was a low-scoring game. It was surprising that the Dolphins, who the last 2 years have gotten off to such hot, fast, high-scoring starts, just looked whatever yesterday. And especially against a defense in the Jags, which might be better than we may have thought. I do like Ryan Nielsen, and I think there's plenty of talent there for them to take advantage of. But was it really good enough to be able to slow down the Dolphins? I don't know. And again, this may be one of those games where we're like, oh, it turns out the Jaguars defense was actually real good. But even then, right? I mean, we've seen this Dolphins team play well against pretty decent defenses before. Maybe not elite defenses, but it was just surprising as all. And I'm hoping for a similar performance come Thursday night.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty good comp to what the Bills went through to some extent. So the Bills, defense was struggling with what we perceived to be a good offense, and then they turned it around towards the later parts of the game. For the Dolphins, their offense was struggling against a decent defense, or what I at least perceived to be a decent defense, and they turned it around later in the game. So it kind of was the tale of two cities to some extent, where Buffalo had to figure out their own self, and so did the Dolphins. They kind of snuck out a win there. It would have been so nice if they had lost that game. But now heading into this game in Miami on Thursday, I'll say this: the pressure's on the Dolphins. If the Bills go down there and lose, my reaction will be, well, we'll see them later in the year. We'll get that game back later in the year. If the Bills go down there and win, then the Dolphins have to come to Buffalo later in the season to chase down the Bills. Like you can't. The Bills and Dolphins can't go 0-2 against each other. Like the team that goes 0-2, then you're out of the division. That's done with. But if you go 1-1, you have obviously a shot. And if you go 2-0, you're going to be the leader of those two teams. So the Dolphins essentially have to win this game. I'm not saying it's a must win, because no games are must wins the second week of the season, in my opinion. But this is very, very important for Miami, and just not as important for Buffalo. Like, I want the Bills to win. I am probably going to pick the Bills to win, but Miami needs this game. They really, really need this game.
Yeah. And, historically speaking, the Bills and Josh Allen have been very good against Miami. It's interesting that they put this game as the first Thursday night game, that it's in week 2. Obviously they played early last year in week 4, but by then it was 2-3-0, or no, the Dolphins were 3-0, right?
The
Dolphins were 3-0 and the Bills were 2-1, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. They met in week 4, and then the Bills just absolutely lambasted them and annihilated them. But yeah, it's just interesting that they're getting this big of a matchup so early on in the season. We'll see what happens. It's going to be very, very interesting. I'm both excited and nervous, as I am with any Bills Dolphins game at this point. But the other thing that's worth bringing up, obviously, is that Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert are dealing with injuries, and on a short week that may end up being pretty significant. Whether or not they play is one thing, whether or not they're limited in game action is another thing. They do still have a very exciting rookie in Jalen Wright from Tennessee. At the end of the day, they'll be fine, I think, at running back, and they still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they have plenty of things to make this offense work. It's just a matter of how well the Bills are going to be able to limit them.
Yeah, I'll say, like, the one thing I kind of put this out on Twitter. I think that the Dolphins offense is better than the Cardinals offense, just because that Tyreek Hill is so freaking electric, and so is that run. Like, that offense is legitimately electric, and it does scare me. I also just think the Bills match up better against Miami than they did Arizona. The biggest issue is Kyler's ability to escape just changes everything. And Tua is not going to do that. He's not going to escape. He's going to try to hit you quick. And then if you get him to sit in the pocket, it's going to cause issues for him. So I, in a way, think the Bills match up better. And with how the Buffalo closed out the Arizona game, I'm kind of excited for this one to at least see what the Bills can do to Miami. On the offensive side of the ball, like, it's Josh Allen. And this is a team he is the daddy of. And daddies do things against those teams. And I expect Josh Allen to go into Miami and probably win his second AFC Player of the Week of the season, because he's sure as hell going to win it this week. So can he do it again next week? That'd be wonderful to see.
It would be great to see that. And it's certainly possible. And I'm very, excited and hopeful and nervous. So it will be a very interesting game. It's going to have some ramifications of some sort. Yes. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how this goes, and we'll see what happens. And that's going to be it for us, I think, unless you have anything else to say at the end of this.
No, that's it.
No. All right. Folks, thank you very much for joining us for this very first Victory Monday of the 2024 season. We hope next Monday will be our second Victory Monday. And we are hopeful for a 2-0 start. We are hopeful to see more of you come back. If you did not hit the like button on your way in, you can hit it on the way out. It does help us. And if you want to share this with your friends, enemies, lovers, and neighbors, feel free to do that as well, as it is also very helpful to us. We are very excited to continue to cover this season. We were pretty excited coming into this season. I think we both shared the feeling that this was probably the most excited we've felt as people covering the Bills for over the last couple seasons. There was just a newness, a freshness to this that was different and exciting. And through the first week, it's pretty great. What is this? What is this? Oh, come on, really? A spin says, wait, True David going to have herpes in the ears if he doesn't do true or rubbish. Don't know what that means, but I guess we can very, very quickly do something here. I don't have anything prepared, so if it comes off terribly, this is your fault, not mine. But it is my fault.
Let's see the true or rubbish. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. So let me think about this for a second. I have to really come up with something.
I got an easy one. If you
you go ahead and give me one. Go for it.
True or rubbish? The Bills win on Thursday night.
I'll go with true.
Was true. All after all, can't believe it. It was true.
In the same sense that, I picked the Bills to win the division again. It's this feeling of like someone else is going to have to prove that they're better than this team. And so far, as the Jets go 3-and-out on their first drive, I'm feeling okay with saying that it's going to be fine. I think they'll be able to win on Thursday. Spin says true. RJ in his infinite pessimism says rubbish. With Taron, I think it's impossible Thursday. That is so little faith in Josh Allen as your quarterback. Anyways, Spins also says Allen is going to his house on Thursday. Yeah, it'll be an interesting game. Okay. True or rubbish? Okay. True or rubbish? The Browns bench Deshaun Watson before the Giants bench Daniel Jones.
Oh my gosh. True. It's true.
This was true. All after all, can't believe it. It was true.
Deshaun Watson looked like he legitimately looked like he didn't want to play football on yesterday. And
it looked like he couldn't play football.
Well, there's that too. And his teammates seem to be picking up on that vibe a little bit and not really vibing with him well. And I think that's the start of the end. I don't think by week 4, if say they lose next week, it might be week 3 that they bench him and say Jameis is a better option. Because right now Jameis is a better option than Deshaun Watson. And then as for Daniel Jones, like it's only a matter of time. He's going to get benched for Drew Lock. But I think that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's relationship is very important in that discussion. And I think Joe Shane's basically like, you cannot bench him because I'll get fired. They will fire me. And Joe Shane's going to get fired, and Brian Daboll are going to get fired at the end of this year. So who knows? Maybe they move on to Drew Lock.
I'm still curious as to how much of the Daniel Jones contract was actually Joe Shane and how much of that was the Giants ownership, because they're just the Giants ownership are very, very loyal, and they definitely don't like the fact that they've had so much turnover at head coach. They don't like having to cycle through guys. It's not what they want to do. They don't want to have this reputation of being dysfunctional or whatever. So I think they do want to stick with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. I think they recognize and acknowledge that whoever made the decision to extend Daniel Jones, I get the sense that it was the owners.
Could be
that they're going to give them a little bit of leeway. And I hope that's the case, because I think Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are both very, very good at their jobs. They just happen to have this one major critical problem. In a similar sense with the Browns, right? That Browns roster is very, very good. They just sold their soul for one of the worst people imaginable, who right now is also not playing well. He's not even playing at like an average level. And here's the thing. Spin here says this is rubbish because the owners can't afford to have Watson bust out. I'm not saying they're going to cut him, because they literally can't. They don't have no one has the money to cut Deshaun Watson. They'd have to do the Chase Bank You would have to do some bank fraud to do that. But they brought in Jameis Winston for a reason. Like, he's a capable quarterback, even if he's bizarre and strange and all that sort of stuff. Like, I don't know, man. I think that the leash for Deshaun Watson is very short. Yeah. I think the leash for Daniel Jones is a little bit longer. I don't know. It's a very strange and bad situation to be in.
For sure.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. I'm good for this. Okay. I also just want to watch this game. Oh, the Jets fumbled. Very good. Anyway, now I got to watch this game now. I'm sure everyone else wants to see the Jets fail just as much as I do. So thank you all for joining us. As I said earlier, hit the like button if you haven't already. Share this with your friends, enemies, lovers, and neighbors. If you enjoyed this show along with what we bring to the table, first of all, subscribe to the Cover One channel here. Subscribe to Cover One Fantasy Football. Subscribe to Cover One Draft, College Football, something like that. All sorts of shows throughout the week. There was a film room that dropped today with Eric and Anthony. There's going to be more film room later this week. There's Sky's coverage under review. You've got Air Raid Hour coming up in a half hour with Judge and Tilt. You've got something else. I'm
under
sure.
Review.
Under review. Joe DeRosa. Love that guy. Yeah, and the Cover One flagship show, of course, with Greg and Aaron, who always do our post-game coverage and do a great job with that. So it's a great network, and if you want to continue to support us in a more direct way, Cover One Pass, $60 a year. It is the best coverage you'll get. It's the best community of Bills fans that you'll get. You'll get insider information before anyone else does, hypothetically speaking, and it's just great. It's the best $60 you'll spend on football this year. No doubt in my mind about that. Uber, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at UberHansen. I tweet a lot, probably too much to be honest. I do have a couple things coming out here in this week. I'll have my rooting interest come out Wednesday, where I tell you who to root for in every single game as my camera goes out. But nonetheless, I'm still here. I'll say it without my camera. Rooting interest Wednesday, matchup preview Thursday, and I'm also going on a Dolphins podcast, which I think will drop Wednesday, called Sideline T. So look out for that. I'll tweet that out at some point.
You can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy on Twitter. I will probably be angrily tweeting about the Bills when they're playing, and it'll be a jolly good time, I'm sure. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We are hoping for a Bills victory on Thursday and a Jets loss by the end of tonight. We will see you all next week. Bye-bye.